everyone. This is Jeff Wilkerson, Professor of Physics at Luther College, bringing you the next in our series of what to look for in the night sky. This week we're talking about the week of May 2nd, 2022. So what we're going to do this week, we're going to return to the planets in the morning sky, in part because they're so spectacular, but also in part because we want to go back to Aquarius. We talked about a little bit about the stars of Aquarius streaming down between Mars and Venus last week. And we're going to take a closer look at the stars of Aquarius, but we're going to do that this week because the Eta Aquariid meteor shower is occurring this week. And we've talked a little bit about meteor showers over these various few years that we've been doing this. And a meteor shower occurs when a comet boils off material, and that dusty material follows in the orbit of the comet, and then the Earth's orbit intercepts that dusty material. So that means we get to the meteors at the same time each year, and they appear to be coming from a single point in the sky as we pass through that tunnel of material. And so that's different from random meteors, the stray meteors that occur each night when you walk out and just look at some meteors that we're sweeping up. And so the Eta Aquariid meteor shower the material that we're passing through is a relatively broad tube of material, so that it occurs over a long period of time. We don't typically have a dense patch that we hit where we have a big peak in the number of meteors. We just have an increase in the number of meteors over a few weeks. So you're going to be out there right now looking at this, and I think the entire week, you'll look online, you'll probably find, what would people say? They'd probably say the morning of the 5th. So after midnight on the 4th, on the night of the 4th, into the morning of the 5th as the peak. Some people might say the morning of the 6th as the peak, but it's a very broad peak. So the entire week is going to be about the same. Anytime you can get out. We don't have a lot of moon. The moon is just past noon. The moon's filling out, waxing in the evening sky. So by the time Aquarius rises in the morning, our planets, remember our planets are beautiful here. Saturn, Mars, Venus, Jupiter, this bright line of planets before sunrise in the morning. And so by the time this region of the sky is getting up fairly high to be able to observe, the moon's long gone. So it should be a great week for observing these meteors and going out and observing the planets once more. I hope you had a chance to see the planets last week, and just keep watching these planets as the pattern evolves in the coming weeks. It's really a spectacular show. Well, interesting thing about the Eta Aquariid meteor. So it's really better in the southern hemisphere. And for those of us in the northern hemisphere, if you're watching from the southern hemisphere, welcome. And you'll have a little bit better show here than I will at mid-northern latitudes. But I still could expect to see under dark skies like this. I wouldn't be surprised to see a meteor every 2 or 3 minutes coming from this region, every few minutes over the course of the week. And so that's not bad to be able to get out and see the planets and spend a half an hour in the morning before sunrise. Anytime after midnight. If you get out after midnight, it's a little bit early, but it's just going to get better and better. But you should be able to see an increase in the number of these meteors. Remember that one of the things we want to not forget to talk about this is an interesting meteor shower, because the parent comet that left this debris is Comet Halley, which is one of the more famous, well-known comets out there. It's not always a real bright comet. I saw Comet Halley when I was a junior in college, so I'll let you do the math on that. When I was a junior in college, in the spring of the year, early spring of the year, I went out a few different times, and watched Comet Halley. And I used a small refracting telescope in order to do that. That wasn't bright enough. Binoculars did a good job. A small telescope did a good job, but it really was barely naked eye visible comet. It wasn't a big, spectacular comet. But it's a well-known comet. Sir Edmund Halley calculated the orbital elements of the comet, understood that it was a repeating comet, that we had seen this comet previously or predicted when we were going to see it again, and was able to use Newton's laws to be able to do this work, and was really is often cited as being great confirmation for Newton's laws of how the universe works, for Halley to be able to do this work, to be able to predict the comet when it was going to return and understand the orbits of the comets. that way. And so it's really propelled us forward in celestial mechanics and helping us understand that. That's why it's such a well-known, famous comet. You know, if you had Halley, probably Halley's greatest achievement, if he had an achievement that was even greater, was being able to call himself a friend of Newton's. I don't think there were many people who could have been able to say that you know, Newton, according to many stories you hear, Newton wasn't the easiest person to get along with. And Halley was able to do that, and Halley was able to sort of work well across groups of people who didn't get along all that well necessarily, and did a sort of a really good job of helping the scientific community at that time. Anyway, enough of that. Halley's Comet is the comet that leaves this debris cloud that we're going to be flying through. We are flying through right now, and it's going to be peaking in the week ahead here. And it appears to come the radiant of these meteors. So remember, these meteors come out in all different directions as we sweep through them, but you trace them back and they look like they come from more or less a single point in the sky, a single spot. Eta in the constellation Aquarius is where that looks like these are coming from. So let's look at these stars just a little bit. So Saturn here, bright object. Mars, fairly bright object. Venus, a bright object, and Jupiter's now joining them in the morning sky. So I'm hoping that if you couldn't see Jupiter, if it was too not up in the sky enough last week to see Jupiter when I recommended, hopefully you'll be able to see Jupiter this week. So that's our planets across here. If we move the two brightest stars in Aquarius, and Aquarius is really not a bright constellation, not at all. So we're talking about second, third magnitude stars by and large. These are fourth magnitude stars. These are stars you got to work a little bit to see. So Sad al-Sut and Sad al-Malik are these two stars, the Alpha star and the Beta star in the constellation of Aquarius. Move up from Saturn, find the distance between Saturn and Mars, move up about that same distance, move up a distance that's sort of equivalent to that, making this more or less a parallelogram, but a square. The side lengths are roughly the same, just tilted a little bit so they're not 90-degree angles. And so you've got, move up this direction here to find these two stars. As always, we look at Alan for star names. You know, you've been through this a lot with me now. And you'll see what he says, I forget what the word he used, liberally, I think. You could liberally translate this. These are Arabic names, of course, as most of these are. And you can liberally translate this as luckiest of the lucky, and this is lucky one of the king. So thinking about lucky stars here. These are the two brightest stars in the constellation of Aquarius, but not very bright at all. A little brighter than third magnitude would be these stars. We come back this direction, and there's a little group of fourth magnitude stars that form a sort of arc, really close together right there. And those are stars that would be worth trying to identify. Get your binoculars out, get your small telescope out, and look for these three stars that are more or less directly above Mars right now. So you find Saturn, you find Mars, you move up, you look a little bit south and east of Sad al-Malik up here, and you'll find Eta, Zeta, and Gamma. Eta, that's going to be the star that's closest to the radiant, the point of origin of the meteors this week. So watch the meteors, look at the planets, and then go ahead and see if you can find Eta here to recognize that as the radiant from which these meteors appear to be streaming. One interesting fact about it, okay, so if you take our celestial coordinate, our terrestrial coordinates here on the globe, we have longitude and latitude that we often use to measure our position on the earthly surface. Longitude sort of measures where you are east-west around the globe. Latitude measures your north-south relative to the equator. So the equator has 0 degrees of latitude. If we project those onto the sky, longitude becomes something we call right ascension, and latitude becomes something we call declination. Okay, so declination. So I live at about 43 degrees north latitude, and the declination of stars that are directly overhead then would be the projection of my latitude line on the sky. They would have a declination of about 43 degrees. So whatever my latitude on Earth is, that's the declination of objects that pass directly overhead, because that's the projection of these latitude lines onto the sky that gives us declination like that. So when you project the equator onto the sky, we call that the celestial equator. So that's the 0 degree, the 0 degree declination line is the projection of the equator onto the sky, the celestial equator. And these stars are really close to the celestial equator. So this is a group of stars. Aquarius in general is a constellation that sort of sits very near the north-south dividing line in the sky. And we see the Eta, Zeta, and Gamma. I think Zeta is the closest of that group right now, if I recall. I think, in fact, should have looked this up for you. I think about 10 years ago, 5 years ago, because of precession of the Earth is wobbling around. Zeta actually crossed from being a very slightly southern hemisphere star to being a very slightly northern hemisphere star. That gives you a sense of just how close that dividing line is, the 0 degree line of declination is that passes through there. So see if you can find those stars. Look with your binoculars. They're 4th magnitude stars. They're not easy stars to find at all. If you've got a good dark sky, you can find them. Zeta is a binary star. It's actually a triple system. So the brighter star is itself a binary star that you can't separate, but you can separate that star with its companion. So this is a binary star that is a pretty good star for small telescopes, a little close. A couple of arc seconds separates these stars. I think it's about 500-year orbital period. And since we've been observing this since the 1700s, we've been seeing the separation get smaller and smaller and smaller, but it's starting to open back up again now. And so we can actually watch these two stars orbit over the centuries, and we're about 2 arc seconds separating those stars. Remember, a degree is about what your finger would be held out at arm's length, and a 60th of a degree is an arc minute, and a 60th of an arc minute is an arc second. So it's a pretty small angular separation, but your telescope can do that. And then you can follow the strands of stars on down this direction that we looked at a little bit last week. Again, splitting Mars and Venus right now to help us find Aquarius. So there we go. We've got Aquarius right here. We're going to try to find these stars of Aquarius. This week we focused down on this region last week. This week we're thinking about Eta, Zeta, Gamma, and the bright stars up here, the alpha and beta stars up here, and see if you can make out some of these stars. If you got a telescope and you want to try to split the double star, the binary star, Zeta, it's worth the effort. And then definitely spend a little time out walking under the night sky, the early morning sky, to see if you can see some of the Eta Aquarii meteors. Think about what Halley's Comet that left those meteors behind, what it has done for us here in our understanding of celestial mechanics, and enjoy the planets while we got the planets in the morning sky. And that's what we got for you this week. As always, everyone, thanks for watching, and I hope you have clear skies in the week ahead. Take care.